kalusugan ay mahalaga sa edukasyon ng mga bata.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فقال ربكم ادعوني أستجب لكم آمين يا رب العالمين الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين اللهم اجمع شامل المسلمين والكريستيان والأمة في مدينة دبعو وسلم دائما مجتمعنا هذا بالسلم والأمن والتقدم في بلدنا هذا آمين يا رب العالمين ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب ربنا إنك أنت الوهاب ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وصلى الله على خير خلقه سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين آمين يا رب العالمين.
In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, we come to you today to praise and worship you and give you thanks for all the things you continue to provide for ourselves and our families. Father, we humbly ask for forgiveness for all the times we have offended you, when we forget to acknowledge your presence in the image of our brothers and sisters, and for moments we fail to be good stewards of the blessings you have given us. Continue to guide and protect each one of us, Lord, that we may always walk in the lights of your everlasting love and mercy. Grant us, Father, with your comfort in times of distress and with your strength in times of weakness. Bestow upon us your unending grace and healing, that we may in turn become instruments of gentleness and compassion to others. We ask all this in the name of your Son, our Lord Jesus Christ, with the prayer and the intercession of our Blessed Mother. Amen.
Isang handang isip, handang bukas na pagbati sa lahat ng mga kasama natin ngayong hapon sa ating first episode ng National Drug Education Program Webinar Series. Ako po si Gian Adaw ng School Health Division at makakasama ninyo po ako na maging na inyong host sa susunod na 2 oras ng talakayan natin patungkol sa mga importanteng bagay na may kinalaman sa National Drug Education Program or NDEP. Kumusta po kayo? Salamat po sa inyong pag-aabang na mag-live tayo kaninang 4 o'clock at salamat po sa mga nakatutok. Nakikita po namin ang inyong mga comments. Nakikita natin na marami tayong mga participants mula sa iba't ibang bahagi ng Pilipinas. We really appreciate kung paano tayo napagbubuklod-buklod ng technology sa gitna ng pandemya na kinakaharap natin ngayon. At itong hapon na to ay isang pagkakataon para ma-update tayo patungkol sa National Drug Education Program. So bago yan, gusto lang muna nating i-acknowledge yung narinig nyo pong kanta kanina ay okay talaga sa DepED na isinulat ng ating mga health and non-teaching personnel na sina Ma'am Luz Biminda Ikawalo, si Ma'am Everlina Gintendes at si Ma'am Elaine Joy Ikawalo. Ayan. At yung music ay in-arrange din ni Ma'am Elaine Joy Ikawalo at ang performance naman ay ginawa ng ating nurse na si Ma'am Richarlyn Mayoral. Yan. Dahil ang ating pong National Drug Education Program ay bahagi ng ating Oplan Kalusugan or OK sa DepED, ang flagship initiative ng Department of Education pagdating po sa ating mga school health and nutrition programs. So again, katulad po ng sinabi ko, nasa unang episode na po tayo ng ating webinar series na ito. So meron pa po tayong 9 na episodes pagkatapos nito. Ayan. So inihintay lang po natin na maka-onboard lahat ng ating mga viewers. Nakikita natin ang inyong mga comments. Yan. Sige, next slide tayo para makita natin din. Yan. So katulad po ng sinabi ko, this is the first episode of 10 webinars sa ating series. And exciting po ang mga topics na mapag-uusapan natin. And napaka-importante rin ng topic na meron tayo ngayon. Pero bago yan, siguro maganda magkaroon muna tayo ng konting interaction kahit online, no? So magbatian nga po tayo gamit ang ating mga local language or dialect. Ayan. So gusto po naming marinig, kumusta po, paano ba magbatian sa isa't isa gamit ang ating mga local language or dialect. Pwede niyo po bang ilagay sa comments? Ayan. So sa ngayon, yung nakikita natin ng mga comments, mga English pa. Alright. Gandang hapon. Meron na tayong Filipino. Sige, pwede ba nating batiin ang bawat isa? Meron tayong mga nanonood from Batangas, meron tayong from General Santos City, from Iligan. Maraming salamat po sa inyong interes sa programang ito. Nakitang-kita natin na kahit anumang sitwasyon meron tayo, nandun yung interest na matuto. Ayan, from Ma'am Baymon Malang, Assalamualaikum from the Bangsamoro region. Madayaw na hambong kamayo hurot from Ma'am Magsalay Jo from Soksargen. Ayan, nakakatuwa ang batian natin. Maayong hapon sa tanan. Naimbag nga melam kada tayo ami apo from Ma'am Glenda. Yan, nababasa po natin ang inyong mga comments. Maraming salamat. Kahit magkakalayo tayo, no, at ang tagal na nating hindi nagkikita sa mga workshops, ito may opportunity pa rin tayo makamingle ang bawat isa. Maayong hapon mula sa Zamboanga del Sur. Hello everyone from Bogo City Division. Okay, let's greet everyone using our from Nars Anton. Maayong hapon mga ka-DepED families. Salamat and shout out sa Talisay NDEP. Ayan, so natutuwa tayo na ang ating audience ngayon ay merong mga teachers, meron tayong BKD coordinators, and sometimes iba pa yung NDEP coordinators, youth formators, health personnel, doctors, dentists, nurses, teachers and non-teaching personnel really interested sa topic na ito at kung paano maisusulong ang National Drug Education Program. Ayan. Mayad na apon kanindong tanan mula sa Palawan. Maupay nga kulop haiyo nga tanan mula sa Samar. Ayan, really encouraging to read from all of you. Sige, this time, magkumustahan naman po tayo sa pakiramdam natin. Ayan, gamit ang emoji na makikita natin sa inyong comments, pwede nyo po bang ipakita sa amin, kumusta po kayo sa oras na ito, 4:23 ng hapon, araw ng Martes? How are you feeling right now? Can you show us using emojis? Yan, may nakikita na tayo ng mga hearts. Sige, show us how you're feeling right now using emojis. Mostly mga smiley na merong heart na eyes. Alright. Pwede po kayong mamili sa maraming ibang mga emojis. Isa po kasi yan sa sinasabi, no, na ito yung pagkakataon natin na makakonect sa bawat isa through online platform. So gamitin na natin yung mga features na meron ang technology na ito para makapag-communicate. Yan, si Ma'am Jo, sobrang saya na may hawak na, ano yan Ma'am Jo? Food, yan. Merong parang nakatawa pero at the same time may pawis. Merong smiley si Nino Monfero, Sir Nino. Ayan, may hearts. Sige, let us know how you feel using emojis. We would like to see them in the comments section. Ayan, merong parang humihinga ng feeling great, and then merong emoji na humihinga ng malalim na meron pang smoke. Meron tayong like sign na nakita from Sir NJ. Okay na okay sa DepED, Oplan Kalusugan. Sige, let us know how you feel. Yan, merong tumatawa. Merong sunny afternoon na talagang araw lang yung pinakita niya na emoji. And what you can see, no, iba-ibang emotions yung meron tayo ngayon at this moment. And thank you for focusing on this activity, kung ano man yung mga pinagdadaanan natin individually. We hope that you find your community to go with you sa ano man yung pinagdadaanan natin. But in the next 2 hours, we will be talking about the National Drug Education Program. And maybe there are concepts na pwede rin nating magamit sa anumang sitwasyon na meron tayo ngayon at ano man yung nararamdaman natin. Ayan, merong naglagay ng emoji na tenga. And thank you for listening. I suppose that means listening. Merong blue hearts. All right, let's go to our next kumustahan exercise and the last one for this introductory activity. Isang mahalagang pagkasunduan natin, bakit ba tayo nandito ngayon? Bakit tayo nag-spend ng 2 hours natin sa harap ng ating mga gadgets and devices? Why are you participating in this webinar? We would like to know, so that we can meet kung saan man yung expectations na meron tayo. Ayan. So let us know, why are you in this webinar? Tell us in the comments section. Ayan. Ang nakakatuwa po dito sa ating technology, iba-iba yung dating ng signal sa iba-ibang bahagi ng Pilipinas. So yung iba ngayon pa lang naglalagay ng emoji. Kasi ngayon pa lang nakakarating yung broadcast natin sa kanila. And it's fun to read your comments, your messages, your reactions. This time, can you tell us why you are in this webinar? Katulad po nung nasa memo natin, no, this is to provide us updates on the program, especially in the midst of the pandemic. Ayan. Pero nakakatuwa na meron din tayong mga kanya-kanyang motivation on why we are joining this webinar. Meron pong nagsabi dito to upskill. Ayan. So, syempre, pagbubukas ng klase, ibang klaseng setup ito na wala tayong physical classes, pero meron pa rin tayong mga programs na implement. So, upskilling, someone said because this will really help us, especially with our current situation, to know more about the NDEP implementation during the new normal. Ayan, para sa bata, para sa bayan, para kay Bathala, sabi ni Sir Ramon. To be updated in implementing the program successfully, sabi ni Doc Boots. Ayan, salamat po for letting us know your intentions for coming here. Para sa mga kabataan, dahil ang pag-asa ng bayan ay kailangang protektahan. Nakakatuwa na meron tayong common ground, no? Kung bakit tayo nagkikita-kita virtually ngayong hapon, na we really are doing this for our learners. Maybe some of you know some learners who are tempted to use drugs or who already use drugs or try drugs, and you have this intention to be of help. Yan, so to learn something from our knowledgeable speakers. Yes, we have a lineup of speakers po sa buong webinar series na to na talagang marami tayong matututunan, so that I could learn more on how to handle my own children, especially my grade 6 student who enjoys yan, ang bilis ng ating comments, no? Pero yun, meron talagang personal mga reasons din tayo kung bakit tayo sumali. Provide knowledge, gain more knowledge. Maraming salamat po for sharing to us your why, kung bakit po kayo nandito ngayong hapon. Sana sa inyo pong pag-participate sa natitirang oras na magkakasama pa tayo ay ma-meet po natin somehow yung mga why na yan. Magkaroon po ng kabuluhan, maging meaningful yung susunod po na 2 oras na gugugulin ninyo sa harap ng ating DepED Philippines Facebook page. So again, thank you very much. Siguro before we proceed, let us just have some few reminders kasi I know that our participants are just getting in. We started with 5,000 viewers. Ngayon, 21,000 viewers na po tayo. So thank you very much. Maybe it's important that we emphasize some few announcements before we proceed. Especially ito po yung common questions na nakukuha po natin from the comment section, from the PMs. Hindi man po namin masagot lahat yung mga personal messages ninyo. Maybe it's important that we address them through these announcements. So first of all, we would like to remind everyone na lahat po ng inyong commonly asked questions ay sinagot na natin sa ating memorandum. And kung magkakaroon man po tayo ng succeeding memoranda patungkol sa activity na ito, ay mababasa nyo ito dito sa ating link, https://bit.ly/2020 NDEP webinar series. So all memoranda, announcements, frequently asked questions, dyan po natin ilalagay. And one of the commonly asked questions, paano po ang certificates? Sabi po natin sa memorandum that certificates of attendance will be issued every activity. Auto-generated po itong makukuha after ninyong maipasa ang ating exit quiz at the end of each broadcast. Mamaya i-announce po natin kung anong oras po ninyo pwedeng ma-access yung ating quiz. Hinide muna natin siya during the broadcast. So yung enrollment key, kailangan nyo po siyang makuha sa ating registration. So ito naman yung registration link natin. It's https://bit.ly/2020 NDEP webinar series reg. So pag nag-register po kayo and tamang email address yung binigay ninyo, makaka-receive po kayo sa inyong email ng kopya ng inyong responses, and at the bottom of your responses, nandun po yung enrollment key. You will use that enrollment key to access naman po yung ating course na makikita sa DepED Professional Development Learning Management System, kung saan po kayo mag-exit quiz, and doon naman po auto-generated na yung ating certificate. And then, pag nakumpleto nyo po yung 10 webinars hanggang November, makakakuha po kayo, and of course, maipasa ninyo yung mga exit quiz, ibig sabihin, and masagot ninyo yung evaluation, doon po kayo makakakuha naman ng certificate of completion. For the meantime, what you will get at the end of each activity is certificate of attendance. All right, we hope that we are able to address some of the questions that you may have about this activity. Maganda po na magsimula na tayo. Nakita nyo po sa ating logo at in-announce din po ito sa ating Facebook page. Ang Department of Education po ay palaging nakikipag-work closely with the agency that is tasked by the government to formulate or create policies in dealing with illegal drugs in the Philippines, which is the Dangerous Drugs Board. So even this webinar is done in close coordination with the DDB. So to introduce our resource person, our guest from the Dangerous Drugs Board, and makilala po natin at marinig ang kanyang message, ipapakilala po sa atin ng Chief ng Bureau of Learner Support Services School Health Division, Dr. Maria Corazon Dumlao.
Magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. Thank you, Gian, Ma'am Girlie, and the rest of the organizers for this activity. Alam niyo po, isang napakalaking karangalan na ipakilala ang ating guest speaker sa araw na to. And he's a noble public servant. He was born and raised in Basilan with a family background known for honest and dedicated track record and good governance. He started his professional career as the designated regional director of the Center for Students and Co-Curricular Affairs under the Department of Education, Regional Office 9. Kaya meron din siyang dugo ng DepED. In 2010, he was the executive assistant of the Secretary of Social Welfare and Development while serving in a concurrent capacity as advisor for street families and children. In 2011, he was appointed as commissioner representing Mindanao of the National Youth Commission. It was also during the same year when he was appointed as an appeals board member of the Movie Television Review and Classification Board. He finished his stint in the NYC as its acting chairperson during the early months of the Duterte administration. In 2017, he was appointed as Deputy Executive Director for Operations of the Dangerous Drugs Board with the rank of Assistant Secretary. President Rodrigo Roa Duterte promoted him 8 months after as the Executive Director of DDB with the rank of Undersecretary. So at present, he's the youngest official to be appointed in the same post in the history of the agency since its inception in 1973. In 2019, 25 member states constituting the Organization of Heads of National Drug Law Enforcement Agencies of the Asia and the Pacific elected him as its chairperson for a term of 1 year. The HONLEA aims to enhance cooperation in drug law enforcement activities. He is the first Filipino who was elected to the said position. Recently, he was confirmed with the CES Career Executive Service eligibility by the CES Governing Board, which formally enrolls him in the roster of permanent third-level career officers of the Philippine government. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming the Undersecretary Earl P. Saavedra, Executive Director of the Dangerous Drugs Board. Magandang hapon po, Yusek.
Magandang hapon, Dr. Dumlao. Magandang hapon din, Gian. Thank you for having me. This is the first time that DDB partners with the Department of Education in pursuing a very important initiative. So katuwang ng kagawaran ng edukasyon, ang Dangerous Drugs Board sa patuloy na pagbabahagi ng malinaw at makabuluhang kaalaman upang iwasan ang masamang epekto na dulot ng ipinagbabawal na gamot lalo na sa panahon ng pandemya. Sa konsepto ng shared responsibility, ating tinututukan ang kahalagahan ng partisipasyon ng bawat sektor upang ilayo ang mga mamamayan sa kapahamakan na dala ng iligal na droga. Striking a balance has been our intention to show to the public that the drug problem is both a security and a health concern. Sususugan ko lang po, both a security and a health concern. Drug demand reduction also captures preventive education tulad po ng ginagawa natin ngayon, advocacy, and most importantly, civic awareness and response. It is our fervent hope that the citizens own what the government is doing to fight the drug menace in order to establish a strong message that we are firm in our resolve to rid the proliferation of illegal drugs in every corner of the society. Patuloy ang hangarin ng kasalukuyang administrasyon na paigtingin ang seguridad at ibalanse ang kahalagahan ng kalusugan sa kampanya nito kontra droga. Ito marahil ang dahilan kung bakit sumusunod tayo sa mekanismo ng Philippine Anti-Illegal Drug Strategy o PADS na siyang tumutugon sa demand and supply reduction pillars para makamtan natin ang drug-free communities by 2022. Kung tutuusin, nalulula po yung ibang mga kasamahan natin. Mantakin po ninyo, there are more than 47,000 barangays nationwide. And yet, our ultimate goal is to attain or achieve drug-free communities by 2022. This is the reason why DepED and DDB invested on the institutionalization of the National Drug Education Program or the NDEP. In other words, we walk the talk. Education is a powerful tool to instill discipline and foster behavioral change as a way of curbing the vulnerabilities of young people from becoming drug dependents. Madalas talaga kabataan ang nagiging biktima pagdating sa paggamit at yung pagtutulak ng illegal na droga. Kaya sila yung kailangan nating i-safeguard first and foremost. Before the pandemic affected our lives, bago itong COVID, I had the opportunity to visit model countries and learn from their demand reduction and preventive education approaches. Iba-iba po yung ginagawa ng mga bansa to make sure that they prioritize demand reduction, preventive education, advocacy, civic awareness. All of them started instilling the serious message of saying no to drugs at the formative years of children and youth. The intention is basically the same as to why we intend to strengthen the National Drug Education Program for our pupils and students nationwide. Let it be our investment for the future. Take note of this. Resources are being poured in to loop all concerned stakeholders in the effort to address the drug problem and create sustainable successes. Interventions are being initiated even at the level of local communities to ensure that the priorities are being carried out properly. Localization is the way. As the responsibility to overcome the drug problem becomes bigger, we need to equip our anti-drug advocates with the knowledge, skills, and attitude to help us fight for this noble cause. Your attendance in this webinar is the first step in solidifying what we want to accomplish. Hindi sapat, it is not enough that we know the ill effects of drug use. Rather, we need to resonate the warning to those who may become victims of drug addiction. It is not enough that we listen to experts on the trends pertaining to the global situation on drug use. Rather, we must take proactive steps to educate our children, the community, and the different sectors, knowing that the pervasiveness of illegal drugs as a social problem cannot be denied. Our ultimate goal is to ensure that our people live in ideal communities that are safe and most of all, free from the perils of anything that could harm them. It excites me to see how this webinar series will help create significant change in the enabling environment where we are all at. May you make the most out of the interactive session, which intends to showcase many best practices that are worth replicating in the field of drug abuse prevention education. Patuloy po nating hangarin ang mabuting kalusugan ng lahat sa pamamagitan ng ibayong pag-iingat. Magandang hapon po muli sa inyong lahat.
Maraming salamat po, Yusek Earl sa Avedra ng Dangerous Drugs Board. Tama po, ang mga programa ng Department of Education ay naka-anchor sa Philippine Anti-Drug Strategy. Mamaya pag pinakilala po ang ating resource person, matutuwa kayo kasi yung mga in-invite po natin are really involved in drug prevention at mayroon silang mga contribution sa mga katulad ng Philippine Anti-Drug Strategy at iba pang mga initiatives na may kinalaman sa drug education and prevention. Yan. Ngayon naman po makakarinig tayo ng isang mensahe para po bigyan ng context itong ating ginagawa. Bakit tayo merong episode na ito? Bakit tayo merong webinar series? allow me to formally introduce, although nakita niyo na po siya kanina, to give us her message. She is a medical doctor by profession and has been in the public health sector for already 26 years. She earned her master's degree in public health through a scholarship from the University of the Philippines, Manila, her medical degree from St. Louis University in Baguio City, and her bachelor's degree in biology from the Mariano Marcos State University, Ilocos Norte. Throughout her work, she has been awarded various international scholarships, including the Diploma in Biochemical and Health Information in Mahidol University, Bangkok, Thailand, the Harm Reduction Program course in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, course on strategies in life skills development for adolescents in Kasetsart University in Bangkok, Thailand, and just recently, the training on drug demand reduction for global trainers in Vienna, Austria. Aside from her current position, she is also engaged in local and international organizations in various capacity. She is the governing board member for the Southeast Asian Ministers of Education Regional Center for Food and Nutrition, or CMIORECFON. She is an advisor for the Private School Health Officers Association, or FISHOA, an alumna of the Asian Institute of Management on the Leadership Development course. A global master trainer of the Colombo Plan's Universal Prevention Curriculum on Substance Use, through which she has already served as a trainer in countries including Malaysia, Dubai, Fiji, Thailand, Myanmar, and South Africa. Kaya mapalad po tayo kapag meron tayong mga UPC workshops in the past that she has served as one of our resource persons. She is also a global trainer on drug demand reduction of the United Nations Office Drugs and Crime. She is a certified mediator of the department, and her expertise is always constantly sought in the development of drug education programs and initiatives. Just recently, UPC initiative on school setting. So, sa ating mga kasama sa DepEd Philippines Facebook page, let's welcome the Chief Health Program Officer of the School Health Division under the Bureau of Learner Support Services. Let's welcome Dr. Maria Corazon Dumlao.
Again, good afternoon to all our viewers. Welcome to the first of the 10 webinar series for the National Drug Education Program. You know, it is exciting to note that despite this COVID-19 pandemic, we are committed to deliver our advocacies on drug prevention. Just the same with other OKD programs, we will utilize various platforms in this new normal to continue to update you or provide you with information on our health programs. Our topic for this webinar is timely since next month it is already the start of the school year, though it is entirely different from the previous school openings because we shifted to various learning modalities. Let us reflect on how school setting plays an important role in substance use prevention. The school-based prevention interventions is part of the 9th series curriculum of the Universal Prevention Curriculum for Substance Use. The training series is developed through funding from the U.S. Department's State of Colombo Plan for International Center for Credentialing and Education of Addiction Professionals. This topic introduces the concept that schools provide the second most important setting for prevention after the family. Their role in most societies is to help prepare our children and youth to become fully contributing members of families, workplaces, communities, and society. You know, we are indeed lucky that our speaker, lahat ng mga guests natin at saka yung ating speaker ay napaka-knowledgeable and experienced in this topic. Yung ating main speaker ay isang professor herself, and she's one of the global master trainers of the UPC at kasama ko rin siya ng ilang beses sa paglalakbay as a global master trainer, and I know that you will learn a lot from her. Pero alam niyo po, ang pinakamahalaga kanina, yung inspirasyon na ibinigay sa atin ni Yusek, and dahil ako'y na-inspire, gusto kong ibigay na lang yung aking mensahe sa pamamagitan ng impronto na tula na pipilitin ko siyang gawing impronto using the word, yung initials ng substance use. So for the S, sabay-sabay nating iparamdam ang ating pakikiisa sa pamamagitan ng paglalagay ng puso sa chat box. Pwede po ba? Usaping school-based intervention, ating ngayong bigyang sentro at halaga, bata, matanda, anuman ang antas at profesyon sa bansa, sadyang mahalaga ang gagampanan sa OKD at sa DDB na programa. T, tandaan natin na health and safety ang pundasyon ng ating gawa. A, alamin ang iba't ibang pamamaraan sa pag-iwas sa masamang dulot ng droga. Yung letter N, new normal ating haharapin at strategies pwede rin nating ibahin. Best practices, sabi nga ni Yusek paigtingin. Compassion sa mga gumagamit, atin ding damhin at intindihin. Exciting, di ba? Kasi 27,000 viewers na tayo ngayon. Di po ba exciting yon? And sa U, unawain ang substance use. Una yon sa ating nilalayon. S, social stigma. Ito ay kailangang buwagin ng ating mga UPC advocates or trained advocates, UPC trainers. Letter E, enhance partnership with DDB, with ATC-PDE at ibang mga sektor sa gobyerno ating paigtingin. So, yung last, yung prevention, ang pwede kong sabihin ay prevention sana tuloy-tuloy, prevention sama all sa edukasyon, substance free sana all. So sana po ma-enjoy niyo po itong ating gagawin at sana po sa lahat ng mga susunod na series natin ay we can still follow at makipag-participate po dito dahil sa pandemic na ito, kayo po ang pinakamahalaga at nasa kamay niyo po ang lakas, nasa kamay niyo po ang power to make a difference in the lives of our school children at saka members of the community dahil sa iyong pagiging advocate ng substance use. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat and again, welcome to this
Ayan. Thank you very much po, Dr. Dumlao. Ayan, so sana pinapakinggan natin even itong mga opening activities na to, no? Mamaya pupunta tayo sa technical discussion, pero ang ganda ng mga opening reminders atin sa ating pagbubukas, yung acronym na binigay ni Doc on substance use prevention, and even yung emphasis on compassion to all people, whether they are using drugs or not, meron tayong pagtingin o pag-unawa na kaya natin silang matulungan at meron tayong magagawa even sa prevention para sa mga hindi pa gumagamit. So it's really an exciting start for all of us para sa ating episode 1 ng webinar series. Thank you for this good start. Marami po tayong nag-register and I understand some of them will be watching later. So kung kayo ay nanonood through the recording, I hope na take note nyo pa rin itong mga opening messages na ito and yung mga inspiring reminders sa atin that we are in this NDEP webinar in the first place because we value the life of people around us, of the people we care for. So whether there is pandemic or even before the pandemic or kung wala mang pandemic, ay ito yung motivation natin. So thank you very much po, Dr. Dumlao, for that message. So alam ko excited na kayo na makinig para sa ating lecture, pero meron na tayong konting reminder bago ipakilala yung ating speaker for this afternoon. Gusto lang muna namin kayong i-remind na kung meron kayong comments or questions or any feedback, insights na gusto ninyong i-share, you have the option to type them on the comment section, pero we understand na sobrang bilis kasi mag-move ng comment section sa DepEd Philippines Facebook page. So we have set up this form where you can log in and type your feedback. So it's bit.ly/2020 NDEP webinar web series feedback. You just go to this Google form, and during the lecture, kung meron kayong insights mula sa pine-present ng ating resource person, or kung meron kayong question na ma-create sa mind ninyo, or kung meron kayong gustong i-clarify, just go to this link and type your comments, your questions, insights, or any other feedback. Ilagay nyo po dyan sa form na yan. We will be closely monitoring this form, and titingnan po natin kung ano yung mga feedback na meron kayo, so that when we go to the question and answer portion later toward the end of this broadcast, babalikan po natin yung mga tanong ninyo and i-raise po natin sa ating resource person. And so to formally introduce our resource person this afternoon, let me call on the National Program Coordinator for the National Drug Education Program, Ms. Girly Azurin. Hello,
Thank you, Gian. Yes, thank you, Gian. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. It is my honor to introduce our speaker. She serves as director of the ASEAN Training Center for Preventive Drug Education at the University of the Philippines, where she also teaches health education courses in the College of Education. In 2018, she spearheaded a training program to develop the personal and social skills of Filipino high school students in 3 public schools in Metro Manila through peer education. As a global prevention trainer, she has been involved in capacity building activities sponsored by the Colombo Plan in Austria, Colombia, Fiji, Kenya, Malaysia, Sri Lanka, Thailand, United Arab Emirates, and of course, the Philippines. She assists the Department of Education in developing health-related policies and the Dangerous Drugs Board in crafting the Philippine Anti-Illegal Drugs Strategy, or PADS. Friends, let us all welcome Professor Francis Grace H. Duca Pante.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Thank you so much, Miss Gurley, for that kind introduction. I am so blessed to be with you this afternoon to share with you my knowledge on the school as an important setting for substance use prevention. This topic is very close to my heart. So since 2012, I have been serving as a director of the ASEAN Training Center for Preventive Drug Education. For those of you who are not familiar with the office, this is located on the third floor of the University of the Philippines in Diliman, Quezon City, College of Education. I know that Gian already did a feelings check, but I know that many of us experience different kinds of emotions. So as you can see, we have here the animal moods. A is for sad, and B is for happy, and C is for grumpy. And I know that many of us can relate with these animal moods. The main point of this slide is for us to remember that whatever you are feeling right now is totally normal and valid. Before I proceed to the main points of this presentation, I would like to express my gratitude to the School Health Division of the Department of Education, led by Dr. Maria Corazon Dumlao. She's a very good friend of mine. We've been together for a long time because of the UPC. And of course, to Ms. Girly Azurin, the NDEP coordinator, and to Mr. Gian Ada, who is a very effective facilitator. So thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so blessed to be the first resource person for this series of webinars for the National Drug Education Program. I'm so excited. And although this is a very new modality for us, I'm not used to talking alone, just facing my laptop, but I assume that you are listening right now, and I hope that you would be able to learn a thing or two from this presentation. So the presentation for now will cover 4 subtopics. The first one is the prevention context. The second is the principles of effective prevention interventions. The third one, we are going to focus on the school as a target setting for prevention. And the last one would be examples of school evidence-based practices. So we're going to review the international standards on drug use prevention. For those of you who are familiar with the Universal Prevention Curriculum, I know that many of you who are watching right now are NDEP coordinators who were trained in the UPC. Thank you so much for watching. This is going to be a review or a refresher for you. But for the rest who are not familiar with the UPC, don't worry. I have prepared this presentation to cover the basics as well as the current trends in prevention in the school setting. So I hope you are now ready. So the objectives of today's presentation include, number one is to describe why the school is an important setting for substance use prevention. So Dr. Dumlao mentioned a while ago that next to the family, the school is a very important setting for prevention and advocacy. The second objective is to discuss the importance of the school culture and climate as a foundation for academic achievement and substance use prevention. So later on, we are going to focus on the importance of the emotional climate in the school and how does this impact academic achievement. And the last one is to specify key roles that schools can play in substance use prevention. So this will focus on three roles that schools should play. Okay, and I know that many of you are familiar with this. Again, this is just going to be a review for the majority. So let me start off with a learning opportunity. This is a sad story that I have. It's a painful experience when I was new in the College of Education in UP. I was asked to teach a course, EDH 130, that is Consumer Health Education and Drug Education. So I was so excited handling that course because it was my first time in the college after teaching the UP Integrated School for almost 5 years. So one afternoon, one of my students told me that he has a friend, okay, who is a former user. And he told me, Mom, is it okay if we invite my friend to talk about his experience? And I told him, wow, that's a good idea. So let's invite your friend and let's discuss, okay, about his experience. So he invited his friend, and that friend, I clearly remember that afternoon when the friend went inside the class and talked about his amazing experience with drugs. And he just kept on talking about the experience, about the richness when it comes to colors and perceptions when he took this drug. And I was so I couldn't actually explain my emotions during that time. I was so shocked, okay? And I'd like to cut him off during the middle of the talk, but I couldn't. So I just freezed and I told myself I made a big mistake. So after that activity, I went to debrief my students and asked them, so how was it? And it was actually to my horror that they said, Mom, it's okay to use drugs. So you see, the whole point of the activity was actually defeated because, of course, my objective in inviting a former user is for my students to be discouraged from using substances. But what happened is exactly the opposite. They were encouraged to use. And when I asked them why, they told me that because it was an amazing experience for that student, for that young person. And he looks like an actor. He has a flawless skin. He was so expressive and we just liked him. So we're going to follow his example and use substances. And maybe when we do, and then when we stop, you can also invite us in the class and then we will also give a testimonial. So you see, even though our intentions as teachers and as prevention advocates, we may have very good intention, but if the strategy is something that is ineffective, then we defeat the purpose. So I wish I knew that using testimonials of former drug users is an ineffective approach. So that was actually a great lesson that I've learned more than a decade ago. So please, for teachers who are listening right now, The use of former drug users, okay, to give testimonials in your classes is actually ineffective. Because it sends mixed messages, okay, that it's okay to use because they can stop, and then in the future they might get invited to give a testimonial. So please don't do that. So the prevention issue is that unfortunately, there are still prevention programs and interventions being done which are not based on what works. So if you ask people, why are you doing this particular school-based prevention program? They would tell you, because we've been doing this for decades, because this is a tradition already. And if you ask them, is it effective? They don't have the evidence. They would just tell you, oh, we have anecdotal evidence. But if you're familiar with evidence-based practice, they need randomized control trial, okay? The gold standard, so that you will be able to provide the evidence that that particular program works. So it is very sad that money and other resources are being invested on ineffective approaches. And through this presentation, I hope that you will be able to get a grasp of what is available that are actually effective and have been proven to work in different settings across countries in the world. So here's an important note before we proceed. Prevention can be harmful. It's shocking, right? Because we know that prevention works if it's done correctly, but prevention can also be harmful if incorrectly applied or implemented. So again, we may have very good intentions, but if we have faulty or ineffective strategy in carrying it out, it might be harmful instead of beneficial. So let me give you an example. I have here two images, very common, okay? I have here drug aware, and the other one is say no to drugs. The say no to drugs campaign is very popular. It started in the US 1980s, and then until now we can see this poster, say no to drugs. What is problematic about this poster? It assumes that it is easy to say no. When it comes, it's not. When in fact, it's not, right? It's actually difficult to refuse, especially when that person who is offering you something that is unhealthy is a very good friend of yours. It's actually very hard to refuse. So, saying no to drugs, that poster is not enough. You should tell the person, especially our young people, how do you say no to drugs? So we need to tell them how. And it shouldn't be so much directive. It's just like a command. And we know that young people don't like that. They don't want to be told on what to do. Okay? So the message, say no to drugs, let's teach our young people how to say no to drugs. And there are different kinds of strategies, right? You can just firmly look at the person, okay, eye contact, and firmly say no. You can actually make up excuses. There are a lot of excuses. You can actually use cold shoulder, right? So you pretend not to hear the person. Or you can also make use of broken record technique. You tell or you say no as many times as needed. So these are just some of the strategies that you can use, okay, in teaching our young people, our kids, on how to refuse when somebody offers them a dangerous substance. Okay, for now, I would like to ask, okay, for a moment, I'd like you to take this knowledge check. Okay, I only have here 4 statements, and what you're going to do is just to determine whether this is true or false. Okay, and number 1 is all drugs are bad. Is this a true or a false statement? Second one is legal drugs are generally safe. Third statement, drug users are not morally weak. And last statement, majority of people are non-users. Okay, can I give you 10 seconds to write down your answers? Just write T or F. Your 10 seconds starts now. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Time is up. Okay, so let's see. Number 1, all drugs are bad. This is a false statement because we all know that medicines are drugs, right? So medicines have therapeutic or curative properties, and they are also drugs. So not all drugs are bad. So this is a false statement. Number 2, legal drugs are generally safe. This is another false statement. Legal drugs include tobacco and alcohol, and we all know that these legal substances are actually very dangerous. Okay, it has a lot of negative effects on our health and well-being. Number 3, drug users are not morally weak. This is a true statement. They are not morally weak. Actually, behavior is a very complex thing. It is affected by a lot of factors. So using drugs cannot actually be explained by just one factor. It has a lot of factors, okay? And we are going to talk about that later. So this is a true statement. Number 4, majority of people are non-users. Another true statement. Okay, so I hope that you were able to get a perfect score. 1 and 2 are both false. 3 and 4 are both true statements. Give yourself a pat on the back if you were able to get 4 out of 4. Congratulations. Let's now move on to the term review. So this is the term review part. And I know that for those who took the UPC course, this is very basic. So now we're going to differentiate drug use from substance use. Okay, so in the past, when we say drugs, okay, this is any substance that has effects on the body and on the brain, okay, when taken. But and later on, drugs have been associated with illegal drugs of use. Okay, so when we say drug use, we usually think of the use of marijuana or shabu. So society has actually changed, okay, the concept of drugs from simply unsafe to relating it with something that is illegal. That is drugs, okay? But when we talk about substance use, this is the use of psychoactive substances. So when we say psychoactive substance, this is a substance that impacts the brain. Okay, so it alters the structure or the function of the brain. And surprisingly, it includes tobacco and alcohol, the illegal drugs of abuse, inhalants, and other non-medical use of prescription medications. So please remember that if you are a smoker or an alcohol drinker, then you are considered a substance user, because substance use is a general term. So it's an umbrella concept that covers everything, okay, from tobacco to alcohol to illegal drugs to inhalants to even the non-medical use of prescription medications. So I hope that the term substance use is now clear to you. Okay, remember that it's a general term that covers tobacco and alcohol. So let's look at the prevention context. So it's actually a very young field, no? Prevention science, a very young field. But when it comes to the context of prevention, we say that it is the application of prevention science to address the health and safety of individuals through improving socialization. Please remember that concept, socialization and socialization processes to enhance self-realization and participation in society. It's very important that I highlighted socialization because we learned, okay, we learn our norms, okay, many of our behaviors through socialization. And the school is a very important socialization agent. The DepED School Health Division came up with a very nice diagram, okay, showing the importance of substance use prevention. Okay, so you can see from here that the objective of substance use prevention is to help people, okay, particularly our adolescents, in order to avoid or prevent initiation of substance use or delay initiation of substance use. And if they're already using, to prevent disorders. So remember, prevention is preventing initiation. So you refrain from using psychoactive substances. You don't start using. That is the primary objective. If we can discourage people from using psychoactive substances, at least we delay their initiation. So instead of starting at age 10, we delay that for a decade. So at least they start at 20, or better if they start after 20 years or after 30 years. So prevent initiation, if not, at least delay initiation. If they are already using, then prevent progression to substance use disorder. So it's actually a continuum. Prevention is very comprehensive. Okay? And the broader aim of drug prevention is to realize the potential of these young people so that they become productive citizens or members of the community and society in general, so that they will be able to maximize their potential and become meaningful members of society. Let's look at the global context. Based on the World Drug Report that was released by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime last June 26, 2020. So this is the latest figure from the UNODC. In 2018, we had 269 million drug users. And this is 5.3% of the global population. Remember, 5.3%. Why am I emphasizing this? Because we need to remind our young people that the majority are non-users. Okay? So at least 95% of the population are not drug users. So please emphasize, in doing prevention messaging, let us emphasize that majority are non-users. Why is this important? Because many young people have this notion that everyone's doing it. Okay, so it's a bandwagon effect. Like, I need to smoke, I need to drink alcohol because all my friends are doing the activity. That's not true. Majority are non-users. Okay, so please remember this message. Tell our young people majority are non-users. USEC Earl Saavedra mentioned the Philippine Anti-Illegal Drug Strategy. This is the National Plan of Action. Okay, and the main components of the anti-drug strategy are two, very important: drug supply reduction and drug demand reduction. The school has a very important role in both. Okay, when it comes to drug supply reduction, that's why you have policies, okay, in school, drug-free schools, okay, drug-free school policy, so that you won't have alcohol, tobacco, and of course illegal drugs inside the school premises. But the most important role is really on the drug demand reduction side. So that's why we provide education, we provide life skills, development trainings for our Barkada Contra Droga, okay, members, because we would like to really take an active role in the drug demand reduction initiative of the government. So please remember, this is a balanced approach, equally important. This is the National Plan of Action against drugs, drug supply reduction, and drug demand reduction. And our goal is drug-free communities by 2022. So that is our aim. For some of you are actually asking, why is the term used, why is substance use the term being used now instead of substance abuse or substance misuse? Why substance use? Okay, the reason is that substance use is actually a spectrum. So meaning, it has different levels. A person may have mild, okay, substance use issue, another may be moderate, another may be severe. So how do we know whether the person has a mild, moderate, or severe issue of substance use? Well, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, the 5th edition, okay, this is the DSM-5, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders, that was actually produced by the American Psychiatric Association, okay, came up with a criteria for substance use disorder and severity scale. So we have here 11 points. Okay, number 1 is hazardous use, social or interpersonal problems related to use. So maybe the person has trouble relating with family, with friends, okay? Number 3 is neglected major roles to use, okay? Withdrawal. Withdrawal is the unpleasant sensations, the unpleasant symptoms that the person experiences whenever he or she stops using drugs or substances. Tolerance is the need to increase the dosage so that the person will get the effect. Okay. And then number 6 is use larger amounts and for longer duration. Number 7 is repeated attempts to quit or control use. Number 8 is much time spent using. Number 9 is physical or psychological problems related to use. Number 10 is activities given up to use. So instead of spending time with the family, the person decides to use the substance. So he or she gives up being with the family so that he or she will have time using psychoactive substances. And the last one is craving. So according to the DSM-5, if the person shows 2 to 3 criteria, then the person has mild substance use disorder. Okay? 4 to 5 criteria means moderate. 6 or more criteria means that you have a severe, okay, substance use disorder that necessitates treatment. So please remember that substance use is a neutral term because there are different levels of use: mild, moderate, and severe. And we can't use a one-size-fits-all approach. So the response, okay, that we need to give to the person should actually match the level of use. Okay, so for a mild case, for instance, we can give them more on maybe life skills, more on life skills enhancement, and then the severe one would be for referral to treatment and rehabilitation. So I hope that it's now clear why the term substance use is being used instead of substance abuse, because people can use substances but may not be dependent on it. So they are not substance abusers, but only substance users. So substance use is a whole range of continuum. It's a spectrum from mild to severe. There's actually a model, the protective and risk factors model, that tries to explain substance use. Okay, so why do people use psychoactive substances? And it's quite striking or surprising that according to recent research, about 40 to 60% can be attributed to genetics. So there is genetic predisposition to substance use. This is quite surprising, right? Personally, when I learned this information, I was actually shocked that there is a genetic predisposition to substance use. And maybe this kind of information would help us be more compassionate to people who are having issues with substance use, because there is a genetic factor. And then there's also personality traits such as risk-taking, sensation-seeking, and impulsive behavior. So those people who have these personality traits have higher vulnerability to substance use. And overall health conditions, like if there are comorbid or coexisting health problems. So people who have mental health issues have higher vulnerability to substance use. Now let's look at risk factors in schools. So according to literature, there are several risk factors. So these factors increase the vulnerability to risk-taking behaviors such as substance use. So school failure is one. And for teachers, okay, I know that most of you are teachers. Please remember this, okay? Students who are underperforming are actually academically problematic. They have higher risk for substance use. So we need to really provide more time and more attention to these learners. Low commitment to school. So if they don't have the motivation, they have very poor motivation to studying, and they are rejected by peers. So you can see a particular student working alone all the time. They are social isolates, are actually vulnerable to substance use. And if they are associated with deviant and substance using peers, as they say, tell me who your friends are and I'll tell you who you are. So if these students are keeping bad company, please watch out for them because they have high risk for substance use. So if we have risk factors, we also have protective factors like academic achievement or academic competence. If we have preventive drug education in school, we are so lucky because the Department of Education has the National Drug Education Program, and you have the Barkada Contra Droga as a key component of the NDEP. And then if we have strong neighborhood attachments, especially now in the time of the pandemic, so having a close interaction with people, even virtually, that is actually very helpful. Parents' attitudes and the kind of home they provide. So if the parents are loving, they're very supportive, that is a very good protective factor. By the way, protective factors decreases, okay, the likelihood that somebody will use substances or psychoactive substances. And then enforcement of limits and discipline, forming strong bonds with children, and monitoring children. So please monitor your children. For those of you who are parents, especially now that many of them are using gadgets, okay, please monitor what they are watching and what they're doing online. So why are adolescents more vulnerable to risky behavior? Let us understand. Okay, why is it that adolescents are highly susceptible to risk-taking behaviors? Well, as you can see from this image, teen brain is still under construction. And many of us are aware of this, okay? The teen brain development, so our brain develops from back to front. So the last part that develops is the frontal part. And the limbic system here is in charge of our physical coordination, emotion, and motivation. This develops earlier than the frontal part. The sad fact is that the prefrontal cortex is in charge of reasoning, organizing, prioritizing information, judgment, control of impulses, decision making. And this is not fully mature until age 25. So, what can we imply from what is this trying to tell us? Young people usually decide based on their emotions, right? So, now you realize why it's very important for adults like us to guide our young people to make wise decisions because the prefrontal cortex is not yet fully developed. So let us guide them in making wise decisions in life. So what are the highest risk periods among young people? Research has shown that key risk periods are during major transitions in the youth's life. So if we are now aware that the teen brain is not fully developed, we should also be aware that they are particularly vulnerable during the major transitions in their lives, like when they are about to transition from elementary to high school. Okay, so from grade 6 to grade 7, and then from junior to senior high school, so from grade 10 to grade 11, and then senior high school to college or work. So from grade 12 to college, And especially now that we are in the midst of a pandemic, this is particularly a stressful time for all of us, especially for our young people. And according to several information that's coming out, there's an increasing trend in substance use all over the world. So we better watch out for our young people. Here you can see the substance use initiation actually starts from middle childhood to early adolescence. You can see from this line graph that the initiation is actually around, okay, it rises starting 10 years old, okay, and then up to 15. So what is the implication of this? Prevention programs should start as early as possible so that we will be able to prevent them from using psychoactive substances. So we need to start as early as possible. Actually, in the international standards on drug use prevention, there's even a program for pregnant women. So you start from pregnant women, so from the womb, okay, until adulthood. So it's good that in the K to 12 curriculum, in the health education curriculum of the Department of Education, we have included, okay, the psychoactive substances, the gateway substances, as early as grade 4. Okay, medicines in grade 4, and in grade 5, we talked about the negative effects of tobacco and alcohol. And it is very important that we remember the different prevention principles. Okay, so in general, in whatever setting, there are 9 principles that we need to observe when we implement prevention programs. Number 1 is that it should have multiple components and settings. So we need to combine. So when we talk about components, they should include not only content, okay, but also strategies, the delivery. Settings would include here a combination of family, okay, so there should be a program that targets the family, the school, the community, and the workplace, and even through media. Varied strategies and skills-based components. So instead of a lecture-based session, why not make use of active approaches like role-playing, okay, creative activities, and more on the development of skills, life skills that are very important, like communication skills, assertiveness, social skills, okay, refusal skills or resistance skills, how to say no. In 2018, we had a personal and social skills development program for high school students. It was participated by 3 schools in Metro Manila: Navotas National High School, then we have Andres Bonifacio Integrated School, and San Juan National High School. We were able to train them, okay? So this is a peer-based program, and we found out through a qualitative study that these young people really appreciate having their peers teach them about life skills. So I guess that is a very promising program, peer-based approach, because young people don't like to listen to adults. They listen more to their peers, to their friends. So that particular program trained, okay, model, a core group of model peers. They were trained on life skills, and then they were asked to deliver the program to their peers. So all of these are high school students. So use of multiple strategies, active strategies, instead of lecture or didactic approaches. Make use of active approaches. Okay. Number 3 is sufficient dosage. So this is the contact time. How many sessions? How long per session? So it says that one-time, big-time activity does not work. I remember when we were I was in my basic education, usually there would be a one-time event, and there would be a resource person who would talk about substance use prevention, and that is actually ineffective. One-time, big-time approach is ineffective. So the good thing is that many schools are now doing programs Okay, especially with the Barkada Contra Droga. So several activities, several life skill sessions, and booster session is also very important. So you need to be able to come up with a program with several components and spread that out all throughout the year and provide booster session. So I think we need to revisit that because now we are in a remote learning modality. How are we going to translate that into remote learning? Number four, it should be theory driven. So remember the theory is very important in guiding us in choosing particular strategies and programs that would meet the needs of the target population. So a good prevention program should be theory driven. There are a lot of theories, right? I know that you have your favorite theories. If I'm going to ask you, if you are a theory, what theory would you be and why? So, and if I'm going to maybe ask you what is your favorite theory, maybe some of you would say Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That's the theory. That's the needs theory, or maybe the social learning theory. In health, education, and promotion, and in prevention science, we use the popular theories are the Bronfenbrenner ecological theory. If you know the system, the different systems, and then of course we also talk about the stages of change. You remember the pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, okay, action, maintenance, and then you can actually relapse at any point. So that's the stages of change. But the most popular in prevention science is actually the theory of planned behavior. It's an expanded theory of reasoned action. Basically, the theory of planned behavior is telling us that our behavior is actually a product of our belief. So if we would like to change the behavior of another person, first what we need to do is to change the belief of that person. Remember that there is no perfect theory. Okay, so you need to actually look into the most appropriate theory given a particular context. The number 5 principle is to develop positive relationships. This is very important. So having the trusting relationship when you are working with young people, that is actually very basic. So you need to develop rapport and supportive relationship. Number 6 is it should be developmentally appropriate. I know that this is a key element. So we all know that the approach in teaching children, for instance, is very much different when it comes to, if you compare that with teaching in college. So the strategies that you need to use are actually different. So we have pedagogy and andragogy. So pedagogy for children and young people, for adults, and we have andragogy. So just like that, it should be developmentally appropriate. And then it should be also socioculturally relevant. That's why there are programs that we need to adapt to the local context. So I remember the universal prevention curriculum when we were actually part of the first cohort, and the material for the universal prevention curriculum was piloted to us. Many of our feedback actually is on the Western images, okay, and examples. They're very much foreign to us. So we told the curriculum developer to actually make it more flexible so that it can be adapted to different contexts, okay, and so that it would reflect Asian values, Filipino values, okay, and to make it more relatable. Next is that this is very important, number 8. So any program should have a monitoring and evaluation mechanism in place. And remember, evaluation is not just at the end. It should be all throughout the program. So from start to middle to end. Okay. In education, I know that many of you are familiar with formative assessment and summative assessment. So it's just like that. So you need to monitor. So you have a plan. Okay. Some of you may be familiar with the logic model. So the logic model wherein you have your situational analysis, and then of course you identify your inputs, your activities, your outputs, and your outcomes. And you can use your logic model as also a monitoring and evaluation tool. Okay, so you compare. So if you have your action plan, when you monitor, you compare the progress based on your plan, and then you do corrective action. Then for evaluation, you ask yourself, were you able to achieve your objectives? Just like doing lesson plan, right? So it should be congruent. You have your lesson objectives, then you have your assessment. So your evaluation should be able to gauge whether you were able to attain your lesson objectives or not. So the evaluation mechanism is very important for us to know whether our program is working or not, or has it been successful in delivering the intended objective or not. And lastly, our program should have well-trained program implementers. That is why I would like to commend the School Health Division of the Department of Education for prioritizing the universal prevention curriculum. I know that we are actually the only country in the world, that was able to disseminate the UPC in the grassroots in terms of the school setting. So we have not we do not only have global master trainers for the UPC, we also have national master trainers, and in the DepEd we have UPC family all over the country. So all regions. Congratulations to the DepEd for that. And shout out to all the UPC trained NDEP coordinators and other staff who are actually watching right now. So now let's proceed to the most important part, the school as a target setting. So Dr. Dumlao said that next to the family, the school is the most important agent of socialization. There are a lot of things that we learn from school, not only the content, not only the curriculum, but there's also a hidden curriculum, okay? The unwritten rules and protocols that we have in school, the rules of action, okay? So schools matter in prevention because the school shapes our attitude towards responsible behavior. So there are rules that we need to follow. It sets the guidelines, what is ethical and what is not. And it teaches appropriate pro-social roles and reinforce positive behaviors that we learned at home and in the community. So it's the school actually has a very strategic role in prevention because it has a captured audience, right? It has a captured audience, and it can provide an opportunity for young people to practice these roles and behaviors under adult supervision. I'm talking about the pre-pandemic setup, right? Because I'm talking about the physical infrastructure wherein you have your students, you have your captured audience, and then there's an opportunity to do a lot of activities with them, and you have the teacher supervising these students. But I know that with the remote learning modality, this will change. And I have another webinar on this, on reimagining preventive drug education in the new normal. So it's going to happen next. Okay, so now let's focus on the three roles of the school when it comes to prevention. So again, I borrowed this slide from the DepEd School Health Division, and they were able to come up with a very good way of summarizing, okay, the roles of the school. So I'm going to start off with the supply reduction. So this is actually focused on having clear and consistently enforced policies targeting the sale and use of all substances on and near school grounds and at all school-sponsored events. So, of course, it's clear that alcohol and tobacco are not allowed inside the school. That is part of supply reduction. Okay, for the demand reduction side, this is the most important role of the school. So we need to actually do prevention programs. So we have the NDEP, we have the curriculum on preventive drug education, because we need to build solid values, norms, beliefs, and attitudes against psychoactive substance use. Okay, and then of course developing the refusal skills of our students. Another role is to reduce the adverse consequences of substance use, meaning we treat our students who are problem users, we treat them with compassion, and then we provide a referral mechanism for them. So there should be a support mechanism for those already using in order for them to be able to have access to services. Okay, so I would like to emphasize that effective substance use prevention programs have been linked to academic achievement and dropout prevention. So prevention works. So schools can make a lot of difference. And there are 4 things, okay, that the school can do when it comes to substance use prevention. The number 1 is, of course, on physical setting. Second is on policies. Third is on culture and climate. The last one would be on programs. So let's start off with the school's physical setting. I'm so happy to know that actually all of our schools are drug-free schools, right? So we are actually following this principle: safe and health promoting environment, school environment, free from psychoactive substances. So that's part of the physical setting. Although because of the pandemic, we are now working from home and doing modular instruction. Maybe in the future, post COVID-19, maybe we can do the face-to-face interaction again. I really miss seeing you face-to-face. Then we also have of course, the first one is the physical environment, okay? This one, the physical setting. The second is on school policies. So the Department of Education was able to harmonize all your DepED issuances, okay, last year. So you have a harmonized version of all those DepED policies. And I know that it was actually very, very comprehensive when it was done last year. So let's review the guidelines for the school policies. Number 1, no substance use on school premises by teachers. Teachers, no smoking, no drinking alcohol inside the school. We need to be good role models. So for staff and students, of course, no substance use for everyone on the school premises. Policies should be transparent and non-punitive. Please remember this. So it should be transparent. It should be communicated well, okay, disseminated to all stakeholders, and it should be non-punitive. So there should be no suspension or dismissal. Instead, it should be something that is compassionate, okay, and will help the student to reform. Number 3, interventions and policies are universal but may include selective components like cessation, support, and referral. At this point, let me just clarify what universal and selective are, okay? When you say universal, this is a program that targets everyone. It's for the general population. So if you have a universal program, this is for all the students. When you say selective intervention, this targets a vulnerable group. So for instance, if you are doing a program that targets the identified students in your school who are actually highly susceptible to risk-taking behaviors because of risk factors like they came from very poor environment, okay? They have the not so healthy family background. So if you have those interventions, they are called selective. So if you are targeting high risk groups, you are doing selective prevention program. And last one, it should be implemented jointly with other prevention interventions. So it should be a comprehensive program. Okay, so you should combine school policy with skills-based education, your life skills training, your barkada contra droga, you have supporting parenting skills and parental involvement. So involve the parents and the community members. That is very important. Now let's move on to school evidence-based prevention program and policies, okay? So for policies, it should be clearly specific what substances are target and what locations and or occasions they apply. By the way, this slide is from the International Standards on Drug Use Prevention. So I'm reading now the characteristics of the content of the policy that is linked to positive outcomes. Okay, so this should be done. Okay, our policy should reduce or eliminate availability of and access to tobacco, alcohol, and other drugs. It addresses infractions of substance use policies with positive sanctions, providing referral to counseling or other support services, not punishment. It supports normal school functioning, not disruption. It supports positive school ethos and commitment to school and student participation. So all of these things are linked to positive outcomes. Remember, don't do the one which is linked to no or negative outcomes, which is punish infractions of substance use policies such as suspension or expulsion. The last one is actually very much controversial because we have this, okay, the random drug testing. So according to the international standards, it shouldn't be a stand-alone activity. So in order for random drug testing to be effective, it should be part of a comprehensive program on prevention. So just to wrap up, okay, when it comes to school culture and climate, we have positive discipline, psychological safety. So this is safety against discrimination, bullying, and other form of harassment. There should be cultural competence. Okay, so you need to be culture sensitive, and there should be a good partnership between the home and the school. There should be consistent message between the parents and the teachers, because if there is a problem with that, then the learner would have cognitive dissonance. What is that? This happens when you have a confusing message. So for instance, the teacher would say, children, smoking has a lot of negative consequences. It can, you can have lung cancer and a lot more. And then the learner would go home, and then the father would ask him to buy a cigarette. So there is a conflicting message, and the learner gets confused. That what happens when you have cognitive dissonance. So in order to avoid that, there should be a strong partnership between the home and the school. And of course, school connectedness. This is the feeling of belongingness. This is the sense of pride that we have. Okay, when you say, okay, I'm a student of Sorsogon National High School. That's true. So shout out to those who are from Sorsogon, especially to my former teachers in Sorsogon National High School, Diyos Marhay na banggi sa Indugabos. Thank you so much for watching. So these are the things that we need to consider when it comes to school culture and climate. We need to build a healthy climate. So how do we do this? There should be a very good relationship between the student and the teacher, the parent and the teacher to the administrator. So a healthy relationship among the various stakeholders. And of course, positive discipline, monitoring the activities of our learners and ensuring that they're culturally competent and they are safe, not only physically, but also psychologically. And that feeling of connectedness is there. And of course, I would like to mention the resiliency wheel. Okay, so for bonding and connectedness, there are actually 5 components that are very important. Please remember this. This is a very good model. So in order for us to build that high level of support within the school climate, we need to be able to teach life skills. Again, I talked about refusal skills, communication skills, okay, assertiveness skills, and other important skills in life, and having high supported expectation. So because when you set a high expectation, you are telling your students that you need to maximize your potential. You can do this. I believe, I have faith in you. Then provide opportunities for meaningful participation. So actually, now that we are doing remote learning, that this is actually very important. We provide opportunities for them to participate in different ways. And establish clear and consistent boundaries. So these are now the rules and the guidelines that must be clear from the start. And another very important dimension of bonding and connectedness is to show care and support. So actually, one of the things that I usually tell my students is that You may forget all the lessons that you've learned from me, but I hope that you will remember how I made you feel in the classroom. Because I consider them as my children. I don't have children of my own, so I consider my students as my children. I shower them with all the love and support. And that is bonding and connectedness. And please remember the resiliency will, especially now that we are in amidst a crisis. It's important that we make each other feel loved and supported. So, the school intervention and policies work within the microenvironment to positively affect learners' vulnerability. So, let me just very quickly summarize this diagram. This is the etiology model that explains our beliefs, attitudes, and behaviors. So, basically, we have the personal characteristics. So, imagine that, okay, you as a person, you have your characteristics, you have your predisposition, you have your own motivations, your interests, your genetics, and everything that makes you you. That is your personal characteristic. And then you are situated in a context, so you have an environment, and this environment can be categorized into two. Your environments, micro level environment. The second is your macro level environment. So micro level is the most proximate. This is the nearest to you, the most influential to you. So you can see here the micro level environment includes your family. That is your first line of defense. Of course, your peers, you have your good friends, and then the school. I highlighted the school here in red, and the workplace. So remember this for family, peers, school, and workplace are part of your micro level environment. Then, of course, you have the macro level environment. So these are the distal influences. So we have economic, in terms of poverty, you have the social environment in general, and the physical environment. These are all part of the macro level environment. So our personal characteristics actually interrelate with the micro and macro level environmental influences, and together they shape our beliefs, our attitudes, and our behaviors. So I told you a while ago that behavior is actually very complex because it's multifactorial. It's a product of our personal characteristics that interact with the micro and the macro level environments. So for now, I'm now going, before I go to the last part of this session, I would like you to do an alertness. I would like to do an alertness check. I would like you to do this exercise very quickly. Just follow the instruction. I want you to grab your left ear with your right hand. Are you doing it now? Grab your left ear with your right hand. Next, now grab your nose with your left hand. I'm assuming that you're doing, and now it's time to reverse. So you need to grab your right ear with your left hand, and now grab your nose with your right hand. You can do that alternately, just to make sure that you're still with me. Okay, so now let's proceed to the last part of the presentation. So I have here a diagram that shows the continuum of prevention practices. So I told you a while ago that when we do prevention, but use ineffective approaches, it might be harmful. So as you can see from this diagram, the harmful, okay, you have the iatrogenic or the harmful programs have been evaluated and shown to be harmful. And then next to that, you have ineffective. So these are programs with no positive effect or which has negative effect. We have the best practices. In the Philippines, we have a lot of this, best practices. There is no evidence yet because we haven't subjected this to randomized control trial, or you haven't done research on this. That's why we call them best practices, okay? We've done it and we make it, so based on anecdotal evidence, it's okay, but we don't have experimental evidence. Okay, and going to my right, you can see promising. So promising approaches, we really think this will work, but we need time to prove it. So these are promising approaches. And second to the best one is the research-based This program is based on sound theory informed by research. So we also call this theory informed or research informed. And the best one is what we call evidence based. Okay, this program has been rigorously evaluated and shown to work. So they have conducted an experiment, okay, based on experimental research, and these programs have been proven to work. That's why we call them evidence-based. So of course, what we would like is to have evidence-based programs or at least research-based programs. So let's just review the documents, the literature that we have right now. So we have the resources from the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. You can download this for free. Just Google the International Standards on Drug Use Prevention, or you visit the UNODC website. You can find this. This is a document, and you can find all the evidence-based programs there across settings. So family-based programs, school-based, workplace-based, community-based, and even media-based. And then this one is the 2018 second updated edition. So the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime worked with the World Health Organization to come up with this updated version of the international standards. So let's look at some of the programs. Okay, again, based on the international standards, we have three target population. I already described to you the universal and the selective, but let's just review. So when we say universal prevention, everyone is included. So it's for the general population. Then when we say selective, this is for the vulnerable group. Okay, so selective prevention. So vulnerable groups. So of course, those groups are involved in truancy, academic underachievement, offending, low banding, parenting styles, family conditions, which are actually putting these people at risk. If you have these vulnerable groups and you are targeting them, we call this program selective prevention programs. And the last one would be here at the bottom, you can see the indicated prevention. So the indicated prevention targets the susceptible or the vulnerable individual. So this includes young people, okay, or anyone who is already using but is not yet dependent. So in general, the school-based prevention program can be summarized into the universal, selective, indicated, and based on the international standards, I categorize them into these three. Okay, under universal, you have the prevention education based on personal and social skills and social influence, and school policy and culture. So we already discussed the different characteristics of the school policy. Selective, so it means this is for the vulnerable group. So again, the prevention education based on personal and social skills and social influence. And the last one, the indicated, which targets the vulnerable individual, the one who already using but is not yet dependent. So this is an individualized intervention. An example of this is addressing individual psychological vulnerabilities. So in general, I have here the whole thing. So this is from the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime International Standards on Drug Use Prevention. You can see the different developmental stages from prenatal and infancy to early childhood, middle childhood, early adolescence, and adulthood. But I'm going to focus on the school. So for the school setting, you can see here for the early childhood education is an evidence-based program. Middle childhood, you have the personal and social skills education, classroom management, pre-pandemic. And then, of course, you have policies to keep children in school. So the conditional cash transfer is actually an example of this. It's an EBI. And then for early adolescence to adolescents, we have prevention education based on social competence and influence, school-wide programs to enhance school attachment, and then school policies on substance use. So from early adolescence to adulthood. And for adolescents, indicated program is addressing individual vulnerabilities. Okay, so if you want a copy of this, you just download the UNODC International Standards on Drug Use Prevention, and you will find all the details there. So just to give you an example of an EB prevention program, this is the BOTVIN Life Skills Training. Okay, so this is an evidence-based program for schools. It was given to 7th, 8th, or 9th grade health classrooms that have received the core program. 8 45-minute sessions provided weekly. Okay, it teaches decision-making skills, stress management, communication skills, and peer resistance skills. So these are the characteristics of a program known as the Life Skills Training Program by BOTFIN. Another example is the good behavior game. So this is for the grade 1 class. So what happens in the good behavior game is that you're going to divide your class into heterogeneous teams. You need to exhibit a large poster with classroom rules, just like the one here. Okay, so you have learned the class rules. We will be polite. We will work quietly. We will get out of our seats with permission. We will follow directions and other class rules. And then you're going to reward entire teams for each child's pro-social behavior, and don't reward when a child is disruptive. It is group contingent. So you see you have there the reward system. And then play for 10 minutes, 3 times a week, extend that time over the year, and make rewards more abstract. The good behavior game is actually an evidence-based intervention. It has a lot of positive outcomes, even during the adulthood stage. So just to summarize what works and what does not work. So what works in substance use prevention, evidence-based, comprehensive prevention program. So it should be multiple components, okay? It should be able to integrate different skills, okay? Coping, personal and social skills, for example. It should have interactive activities, not lecture. It should have structured series of sessions. It involves all stakeholders. So meaning you involve the parents, the community members, the administrators, the teachers, and the learners. It should provide booster sessions, no, not one time, big time. And it should be delivered by trained teachers and staff. So the NDEP coordinators and staff who are training the UPC, good job. Okay. What does not work? Fear arousal or scare tactics, as shown by evidence, it is linked to poor or negative outcomes. Information on specific substances. So in prevention, what we're going to make you remember is that when discussing the different substances, you just need to focus on the general effects. Do not discuss in detail. So for example, if you are talking to high school students, do not discuss every information about, for instance, shabu. Shabu has these characteristics, it has these effects. No, you just need to focus on the general effects. So when you use psychoactive substances, these are the general effects. If you're using stimulants, these are the general effects. If you're using depressants, these are the general effects. If you're doing or using psychedelics, these are the general effects. Do not focus on specific substances because you just increasing the curiosity of the learner, and that is counterproductive. So just make it general. When you focus only on self-esteem or emotional education, that is also ineffective because it should be comprehensive. Not only self-esteem, but also skills. So there should be content, knowledge, there should be life skills, there should be self-esteem. Okay, so it should be comprehensive. One-time, big-time drug lecture does not work. Unstructured and non-interactive sessions do not work. The use of testimonials of former drug users does not work. Okay, so these are the ineffective approaches that we should not follow. So in a nutshell, the school is an important socialization agent that it is critical in substance use prevention. So again, next to the family, the school has a very important role in substance use prevention. Second, adolescents are particularly vulnerable to risk-taking behaviors because of physiological and environmental factors. So we talked about the teen brain as underdeveloped. And the school can make a lot of difference through physical setting, policies, culture and climate, and of course, programs. The school has a role in supply reduction, but most importantly, in demand reduction. This is primarily our role, demand reduction, and in reducing the adverse consequences of substance use. It takes the engagement of all stakeholders to ensure that prevention interventions work. It takes a village to educate a child. It takes a village to deliver an effective substance use prevention intervention in the school. Another thing that I would like to emphasize before I end is that there is a notion that people, young people especially who use drugs, say that drug use or psychoactive substance use is their lifestyle. So we who advocate for healthy lifestyle, we need to provide them with helpful alternatives. So instead of using psychoactive substances, there are a lot of things that we can do. Okay, something that is related to our spiritual wellness, something that is related to our mental wellness, or social, okay, and ethical wellness. Volunteering is actually very healthy. And of course, joining Barkada Contra Droga. I'm thinking of having a virtual platform more prevention work. Now, what do you plan to do to advocate for evidence-based prevention in your school? So just choose one of these questions and then feel free to share your insights and your reactions, your feelings in the chat box. So thank you so much, everyone. I would like to end by sharing with you my own quotation. Teaching nourishes my mind, strengthens my heart, and nurtures my spirit. I don't do it for a living. It is my life. Again, thank you so much, everyone. Let us make our purpose and passion in drug prevention advocacy so that together we will be able to attain greater heights. Thank you, and I hope that you were able to get something from this e-lecture.
Wow, thank you very much po, Prof. Grace. That was one packed, really jam-packed lecture for a little more than 1 hour. Thank you to the 25,000 viewers who are still with us. Please stay tuned kasi meron pa tayong Q&A and then we have some important announcements. Prof. Grace, we have some questions that we would like to raise with you. Ang number one na tanong na po na lang ina-ask nila, are you sharing a copy of your presentation to our participants?
Yes, I would be happy to share the presentation. Most of the materials are from the Universal Prevention Curriculum by the Colombo Plan, and I acknowledge them. So yes, I would gladly share with you the material. Thank you.
Yeah, and so to number one question kasi siya occurring in the comment section and then doon po sa ating form, there is really this interest to share this information, to maybe savor a bit some of the slides kasi you made really powerful points for each slide. Isa po, Prof. Grace, doon sa mga parang nag-mark sa akin sa sinabi niyo at the beginning of this lecture was that ginagawa natin ng prevention to save lives, to keep people healthy, and yet prevention can be harmful if we are not careful, if we are not evidence-based and all. So much of the discussion revolved around the school-based setting, which in a way we have some time to evaluate, given that in the next few months we will not have physical schools opening. So nasa bahay po ang mga learners natin. We have the time to reflect on how we are doing our programs. Yung kaninang binanggit niyo, Prof. Grace, na hindi pala evidence-based or hindi pala nag-work or even negative outcome pa pala pag nag-invite tayo kunyari ng mananakot sa mga bata, no? Na iipunin natin sila sa isang gym and then merong magsasalita. Ang goal, takutin ang mga bata against drugs. Hindi pala evidence-based yung ganon, no? Prof. Grace. So yes. We have the entire time to think about how we are doing our programs in schools so that when we open our schools physically, we consider all this really meaningful information na pwede namin i-apply. Pero ang immediate question sa ngayon po, Prof. Grace, and we are thankful for the information that you shared. And I know itong question na to might actually take creativity on our part to answer. And maybe an entire new webinar altogether. Pero maybe just share us some insights. Given po na new normal ito, this is a question from Ren Pendon from Davao Occidental. Given that we are in this new normal situation, paano po natin i-assist yung mga kabataan natin who are exposed to their respective families, who might be using substances, who are not as regularly monitored by teachers like we do when we are in physical schools?
Thank you so much, Gian. That's actually a very interesting question and very relevant to the current context. So I guess now it's very important that the family, okay, the role of the family comes into play, because now our young people are now spending time with their parents. So it's very important that parents should be our role models. Remember that the family is the most important protective factor. I've been to several countries, and one common element that they usually tell us is that when you have a strong family, then that is the most important protective factor. So I guess we need to shift our focus to the family, because you are correct, Gian, that the teachers now cannot monitor the children because they are now at home. So it's the parents' responsibility actually to be good role models, to teach their children, okay, on the proper behavior and the helpful practices. They need to model that first. And I guess many of the things that the the person who asked the question, I'm going to actually answer that in my next webinar, because it's on reimagining preventive drug education in the new normal. In this presentation, I just focus on the school as a prevention setting, and the context is really pre-pandemic. So without COVID-19, as you can see, I talked about the physical setting. So it's the infrastructure, the school building is there, the physical environment is there, and it's missing now in the current context. So don't worry, I'm going to comprehensively talk about the new normal, or the better normal, when it comes to the preventive drug education in my next webinar. But for now, I'm asking the parents at home, please, you are now the drug prevention advocates. Okay, you are our partners in drug prevention. So please model the right behavior, because your children are watching you. So you should be a good example. Thank you.
Ayan. Grace, actually, kahit naman po meron pa tayo next webinar no, na magiging mas masasagot yung question na yon. I think hindi lang helpful yung mga shinare nyo ngayon in evaluating or rethinking how we were doing things before the pandemic happened. And pag nag-resume ang classes, we make sure na evidence-based na yung approach. Pero din po mga principles kasi kayo na shinare na pwede namang gamitin in the family, in the home setting, even right now. For example, maybe some parents have punitive approach to disciplining their children, and you emphasized earlier, hindi pala nagwo-work yung the more that you are nag-i-incite ng fear, the more that you intend to punish, negative yung outcome. So focusing on positive relationships,
You are correct, Gian. Actually, most of the principles that I have discussed in the school setting is also applicable to the family setting. So primarily the positive discipline that you have mentioned, the monitoring, okay, guidelines, those are actually very helpful even in the family setting. And again, maybe just the partnership, because I'm actually promoting not social distancing, okay, but physical distancing, because in the current pandemic, it's very important that we stay connected with the people we love and the people who matter to us. So even virtually, make it intentional to connect with people, with your family, with your loved ones, because it's also very important that we safeguard our mental health. And we all know that this crisis is very much stressful. So we need to manage our stress in a healthy way. Because one of the reasons why many people are using psychoactive substances, because they are stressed. So we need to find ways to manage our stress the healthy way. So make self-care intentional.
Thank you, Professor Grace. Ang ganda rin ng emphasis po ninyo na hindi lang ito about those who are already using, no, but the bigger part of the population whom we are preventing, delaying the first use, or kung kaya nila na wag na talagang gumamit in their entire life and just pursue other healthier options. Meron lang pong question dito kanina from Divina Alapitan. Kasi interested po siya to know. Meron pa pong parang signals, Professor Grace? Kanina you presented about risk factors, or meron po kayong pinakita about yung parang what situations a person are in that eventually kapag wala siya ng protective factors or kapag marami siya ng risk factors na yon, nag-increase yung risk niya to engage in in substance use. Pero there's a question here. Is there a way to parang makakita po kayo ng mga signals, especially if our teachers, our personnel, health personnel, our coordinators are interested to know. Halimbawa, nakita ko na nag-post sa Facebook yung isang learner ng mukhang nag-vape or something. Is that something to suspect agad? And then how do we know? Are there signals? Are there like signs to watch out for?
Thank you so much, Gian, for that question from Mom Divina. That is actually very interesting. Before I answer that, I would like to emphasize again that the role of education is to increase protective factors and minimize risk factors. Okay, that's our role as educators and prevention practitioners. So basically, if I'm going to summarize my answer to this question, one word, change. There is a change in the behavior of that child. So for instance, a child who is very expressive becomes secretive, then something is wrong. So you better suspect that maybe that child is up to something that is unhealthy. If there is a change in the set of friends, that's another telltale sign. If there is a change in the physical or the psychological aspect, another sign. So there is a change. Thank you.
All right. So it really involves relationships din siguro po, no, Prof. Grace? Kasi parang kung hindi mo mapapansin na, ay parang may nagbago. Kasi kung from the start, we are not looking into the kung ano yung initial baseline behavior ng person, hindi natin siya makikita. And I think our teachers are very good at that, no? Na to really focusing on nasa na yung learners nila, nasa na sinong walang gadget, sinong pupuntahan sa school. And if they begin to see changes, it's important na parang, I can do something about this.
Pero right, Ian.
Opo, Prof, may binanggit kasi kayong levels of substance use kanina. Sino daw po ba ang magsasabi no na, kunyari meron ng parang may change na nakita dun sa person and then gusto kong tumulong, who is the person to assess the level of substance use?
Usually these persons are trained mental health providers. Okay, usually they should be trained by the Department of Health because they need to actually assess the level of substance use issue in a person. So this should be well-trained personnel. And I would like to also add to what you've said, Gian, about the importance of monitoring and observation. I know that teachers are very good on that. So upon seeing the student, we get to know whether that student is sleepy or hungry because we have very sensitive and very good observational skills. So I guess the parents, you know best your children. So just monitor more. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much po, Prof. Grace. Alam niyo po, ang dami pang questions na meron tayo dito. And I think many of them will be answered in the next episodes. Makakasama pa naman po natin ulit si Prof. Grace sa kanyang lecture. Yung iba naman po ay questions about NDEP that we can answer through memoranda or other announcements. Thank you very much po, Prof. Grace. Ang ganda lang nung sinabi ninyo na talagang may role ang lahat. And it's a multi-stakeholder approach. Hindi kaya ni teacher gawin lahat. We have our health personnel, we have our guidance counselors kahit sparse pa sila sa ngayon sa ating institution and sa bansa. Our mental health professionals, we're really in this together. And ang ganda ng point po from the beginning that we are working to save lives, to promote health, and we better really check how we do things and make sure that we do not do more harm and instead makita talaga natin yung positive relationships that we have with our learners, with their families and the community that we are serving. So thank you very much again, Prof. Grace. This is really a jam-packed lecture na ma-access naman po ng ating mga viewers yung inyong PowerPoint presentation. This recording will still be here and will still be viewable. Pwede pong balikan, i-review, especially yung mga nag-register pero hindi po nakapanood ng broadcast. We really encourage you to pay attention from the start, from the opening messages of our guests, from the DDB to the opening message and poem of Dr. Dumlao, up to the technical presentation, a very jam-packed presentation by Prof. Grace. Maganda po, no, parang namnamin natin, and let's really take a look. So just some final reminders. Makikita po ninyo ang recording na ito sa ating Professional Development Learning Management System. Nagtatanong po kayo, isa pa sa number one, ay parang top question kanina, hindi po namin ma-access yung PDLMS, yung course. Yes, during the broadcast, ini-hide po natin siya because we need you to focus on watching the broadcast. Later at 8 p.m., magiging available na po ang quiz for today. And kapag naipasa po ninyo yon, ibig sabihin talagang nakinig tayo sa buong broadcast, magkakaroon po kayo ng certificate of attendance automatically generated at the bottom of the quiz. So i-click nyo lang po yon, and then pwede nyo na pong i-download. Many of us are new users of this technology, so we really appreciate your understanding, your patience in navigating the platform. But we would like to thank our colleagues in the central office at the Department of Education for their support po para sa webinar na ito. We are thankful for the support of our Information and Communications Technology Service or ICTS. Sila po yung talagang nag-a-assist sa atin dito sa webinar platform. Even dun po sa sinabi kong PDLMS kanina, where you can generate your certificates. They have been leading us innovations in DepED related to ICT. Maraming salamat po on behalf of the School Health Division and Dr. Dumlao. Salamat po Director Abram, Sir Mark, Sir Paps. Maraming salamat din po sa Public Affairs Service who have been very helpful in us, hindi lamang po sa NDEP but sa marami pang school health and nutrition programs in creating the collaterals, in promoting this event on the DepEd Philippines Facebook page, to Director Godoy, Johnson, Lindon, and the rest of the team. Maraming salamat. Thank you rin po sa ating mga kasamahan sa Youth Formation Division, sa DepEd Regional Offices, sa ating school health and nutrition personnel for disseminating this information and championing not only the program but the principles that the program is advocating for: compassion, positive relationships, and the beautiful things that go with the National Drug Education Program. And of course, thank you po sa ating partners from the Dangerous Drugs Board, sa ating pong partners from the ASEAN Training Center for Preventive Drug Education, Prof. Grace, and the rest of the ATC-PDE. Maraming salamat po. Hindi lamang po sa webinars na ito natin sila nakakasama, but even in finalizing and crafting our own policies and directions for our program. And of course, sa inyo pong lahat ng nanood ngayon, we exceeded 25 minutes original natin na sinet. Thank you for patiently staying with us simula pa po kanina. And thank you dahil sa interest ninyo na makasama kayo in this fight for a healthy and for a safe environment and school and whatever platform we have for our learners, our teachers, and the stakeholders na kasama natin sa DepEd. Muli maraming salamat po. We will see you next week again at 4 o'clock Tuesday para naman sa susunod na episode ng ating National Drug Education Program or NDEP webinar series. Magandang gabi po.